Hi everyone and welcome back to the Toffee Blues podcast with me, Callum Snell. Delighted to say Mike from the Unholy Trinity podcast has jumped back on with us again for this week's edition. We are available on all podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts from, and there'll also be a version going out on YouTube as well. So yeah, we're joined by Mike. How you doing, mate? You all good?
Very well, mate. Yeah, very well. Quite busy, but all happy the Blues are back this weekend, that's for sure.
Of course, absolutely. It seems like it's been forever, doesn't it, since that West Ham game, but here we are, facing another round of fixtures, which is all good. Last week, there wasn't an awful lot going on with it being the international break and everything like that. Bit of negative injury news as well, which I'm sure we'll jump into in a bit of detail. We've had some updates on that today. So yeah, let's get straight into it. Obviously, last week, it's been all international games, it's been the Nations League, everyone's favourite competition. Unfortunately, it's seeing one of our star players, if you like, Nathan Patterson, pick up an injury. Last week, the jury was out with the extent of this injury. It looks like it's his ankle. Not a lot of people were so sure of how long it was going to be, but what we do know is just how important Nathan Patterson is to this Everton side now. He just seems to be just getting better and better week on week in that right back position for us, and it was such a shame to lose him out to injury in such a competition. So came out today, the club confirmed that we're looking at about 4 to 5 weeks with Nathan Patterson, put my teeth back in. It could have been worse, I suppose, Mike. Could have been a lot worse than originally first feared, but we'll take the 4 or 5 weeks. So when do you expect to see Nathan Patterson back? Do you think it's going to be maybe after the World Cup now? But of course, it's better than it could have been, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously we heard at the start of the week of potentially 6 weeks, so this is slightly shorter. But my thinking at that time was it was going to be after the World Cup. You know, obviously we do travel to Australia for a couple of games, don't we? After we play Bournemouth, we go over there for say 10 days or so. So there will be a couple of friendlies. Maybe that'll probably be ideal for him to get back into playing some kind of semi-competitive football. So obviously when you see him go down and when you slow down the incident which led to the injury, you feel the worst, don't you? I mean, we were all thinking some kind of ligament damage to his knee. Even if it was, I think medial ligaments, it still could have been sort of, a couple of months. So you were fairly glad that it wasn't. But such a shame, like you said, then he started the season particularly well. After probably Alex Iwobi's probably been our best player, to be honest. I think everyone would probably agree he's definitely in our top three anyway. And it's been good for him to have that break last season when he did get injured. I think I said it on the last podcast, just to settle down, settle into life in the city, understand what the club's all about. And then obviously he started the season really well. And unfortunately for him, he's going to miss out on the next probably 4 or 5 games. So it's over to Seamus Coleman to come back in, it looks like.
Yeah, and I think it's a bit unexpected, actually. You talk about Seamus Coleman there. He's a player who I think, everyone knows he's at the back end of his career now. I think a lot of people were quite happy for him to sort of step into this role this season, almost like this backup right back, which he's more than capable to do. He's played a lot of football in the last couple of years, up until the Nathan Patterson signing. It was just something that the fans went on for a long time about, was getting that right back position filled. And thankfully, we've managed to do that now with Nathan Patterson, who's a top player. But as you just touched on there, it's time for Seamus Coleman, the club captain, to come back into the fold. He can do a job, can't he, Mike? There's far worse options we could have had. It's not like we're relying on John Joe Kenny to come in or anything like that. He's a solid player, Seamus Coleman, and he's been a fan's favourite for many, many years now at the club. Always put the shift in, gets what it's about. And, Seamus Coleman coming in for 4 or 5 weeks, 6 at most, who knows? Of course, I think we'll learn a lot when we go to Australia for these friendlies, if Nathan Patterson's going to be back or not. But it'll be good to see Seamus back, I suppose, won't it, Mike? Because, we know that we don't want to see him play every single week because his legs and his body just won't allow him to do it anymore. But it'll be good to see him come back and see that he can still do a job with the club. What do you think about Seamus Coleman coming back into the fold?
Yeah, I think when obviously Patterson got injured, and then you see the reaction on social media, which, as per usual, it's always an overreaction to Seamus Coleman, potentially having to be our right back for the foreseeable. But we know what he's all about. We know he's a consummate professional. He's the club captain. I'm sure Nathan Patterson has learned a lot from him in the time he's been at the club already. He's going to give up 110%. Every single time he plays. It just shows you how well Patterson started the season. That's the reaction just said to me, you know, how good he's actually been. To think that we were, I mean, Seamus Coleman, I think, said himself behind closed doors that he knew his time was coming to an end probably 2 years ago, and he needed someone to come in and take over the reins. But for, you know, a case of 4 or 5 games, he can certainly do it. Of course, he can. You know, we know he can. You know, whether we see a change of formation, I don't think so. I think that Frank Lampard will be quite keen to keep the 4 at the back. You've got that extra cover now with Azusa and Gay anyway in the middle of midfield. You can, you know, just slot back in if, you know, Seamus Coleman breaks or Mykolenko goes forward. So I'm not too concerned. Mason Holgate is due back shortly, so could always slot in at right back if we want a little bit more pace. So that's another option. So it's not all doom and gloom. We've got decent right back cover now when we haven't had previously. But as I say, it's more. The reaction was more a reflection on the fact that how well Nathan Patterson started the season.
Yeah, that's where the sting to the tails really come from, isn't it? It's just how much of an impact and how much of a positive effect Patterson's had on this side. But yeah, it's great to see Seamus back. We're not in a bad run of form at the moment. It's a good time for him to come in. There's a lot of positivity around the camp at the moment, so it's almost the perfect time for Seamus to come back in the side. And you touched on options there, and you know, me and you, Mike, have touched on this a few times on this show now, haven't we? How it's good to have these different avenues available now. You know, you touched on Mason Holgate there, what I'd actually forgotten about, to be honest with you. It just shows how good the current side have been playing. So there are players coming back, and it's not doom and gloom, as you say. We're not relying on anyone who's A, not good enough, or B, inexperienced to come in and do a job. So for Seamus Coleman to come in, it's a solid option because, you know, for 12, 13 years now, he's been one of the first names on the team sheet. So there's not too many issues there with him coming in the short term. But 4 or 5 weeks, Nathan Patterson, we're going to miss him, obviously. He's had a fantastic start to the season, fantastic player. And I think the media are starting to pick up on that as well now with some of the reaction with him missing out through injury. So it'll be a big miss, but Seamus Coleman, time for him to come back in the fold, and it'll be interesting to see how he does. Just the one appearance so far this season for Seamus in the League Cup tie against Fleetwood. But yeah, good to welcome him back. Moving on now, bit of transfer news this week, even though the transfer window has shut, and it is Allan. Allan has departed the club after 2 years. He's gone to the United Arab Emirates to join Al Awada. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but he has he's moved on. It's a shame. You know, there was a time when Allan was regarded as a really, really useful player for the club, brought in by Carlo Ancelotti, of course, during the COVID season in 2020, slotted into the side brilliantly. Him and Abdoulaye Doucouré played really, really well at times. Sort of had his injury issues a little bit now and again. But when he was on form, he was a really useful player for the club. Made 57 appearances in all competitions for the Blues, didn't register a goal. But yeah, he did the job, didn't he, Mike? I mean, if it were me, I would have liked to have kept him maybe as like a squad player to come on. But I think he's probably too good for that maybe, and he can have a better effect somewhere else. But I think overriding, I just don't think he's in Lampard's plans, is he, with this current midfield setup? So what's your take on the Allan transfer, Mike?
I think it was quite obvious a few weeks ago that he was going to move. Obviously, the transfer window closed, but there were other avenues and other windows still open, and the main one being obviously over in the Middle East. There was a few transfer windows still open until the end of September, start of October as well. So I think that, you know, looking at the options we've got in centre midfield, the injury issues that he's had. Obviously had a hernia operation over the course of the summer. The age of him, the wage that he was on. I think you look at all those things and the managers decided, you know, and obviously Kevin Selwell as well, that we need to be moving these kind of players on. We've seen it already in terms of other players who have gone, who obviously players who weren't given new deals, Fabian Delph, Jens Tossen, Gylfi Sigurdsson, obviously now Allan. Players who offered, you know, 57 games over in the time he's been at the club is not a great deal. You know, he's had quite a few stints out with injury, and like you said, you know, in that season under Carlo Ancelotti, that first season, him and Doucouré both got injured, didn't they, at some point? And we were like, you know, what are we going to do now? We haven't got the other players to come in and replace them. You know, the two of them work really well together. It shows you now the direction the club are taking. For me, you know, you look at the options we've got. You know, you're starting to see are going to be Onana, Iwobi, who's been absolutely terrific, and Azusa Gay. You've then got off the bench. Obviously, James Garner has been brought in. Yet to see him, but, you know, a young lad, loads of potential. You've got obviously Tom Davies as well, and you've still got Decore there as the third option. So you've got some real options there now. And I always wondered with Allan whether, I was happy when he signed, but I always questioned, was the league too quick for him? He hasn't got blistering pace at all. He's quite slow, it's truth be told. Great in the tackle, loved his attitude when he played, but one of those players that you knew would always give his all. But I just think that at times it's just got a little bit too much for him, and that's probably why he suffered so much with injury. So I wasn't surprised when you weren't seeing him in the squad, in a match day squad. You sort of you think the writing's on the wall. But best of luck to him. We didn't probably see the best of him. He didn't probably play his best football, but at times I thought he was decent. But do I think it's right he was moved on? I would say so, yeah. I think it was about time that we sort of got these kind of players now off the books, and let's look forward now with a bit of youth and obviously even more options that we've got available to ourselves now.
So would you argue that Allan's time at Everton has been quite underwhelming? Have you been quite in the hole? Have you been a little bit disappointed considering we brought him in, 29 years of age at the time from Napoli? He was a permanent fixture in that side. Carlo Ancelotti was obviously very keen to bring him in. And, in almost, I suppose, bang on 2 years because the transfer window got extended, didn't it? He's now shown the door. Obviously, you mentioned some great points there about his age, his wage, and perhaps not being quite up to speed in the Premier League. So how would you assess his time at the club? Obviously, 2 years here. I think it's been full of ups and downs. He's dipped in and out of form. But what would your lasting memory be of Allan with his effect on Everton Football Club?
I think underwhelming is probably the right word, to be honest. And I think that the main reason for it is the fact that we didn't see him as much as we wanted to see him. That's probably the biggest reason why. And he probably was never really used in the right way as well, I'd say. He was never a number 6, to be honest. If you look at his time at Napoli, he was always really efficient at carrying the ball forward and starting attacks off. He, not really sitting in front of the back four. We used him there because we almost had to. So you wonder whether in the midfield 3 now, he would do more of an effective job, playing slightly further forward. But like I say, it's what we've got now as other options. Does he get ahead of the 3 that are currently playing in midfield? No. Does he get ahead of the core rate? No, because he's more energetic. So you're looking at it, is he 5th choice? Well, you've then got James Garner, who is, I say, bags of talent, who, I'm looking forward to seeing much more of him. So he's probably below him. And to be fair to Tom Davies, he started the season pretty well as well. So you're looking at, is he going to be sort of 5th, 6th, 7th choice in a Premier League side at his age? No, he's not. So I just think that, I think underwhelming is probably the best way to look at it. I would have liked to see a bit more of him and him used maybe in a slightly different position, slightly further forward. But I say injuries dictated his time, so it's a shame we didn't get to see more of him. But I think once Carlo went as well, I think there was always obviously that link. They had a previous relationship that potentially impacted things as well for me. Not questioning him as a professional footballer, but I always think that the players that Carlo brought in, most notably James and Allan, were the main 2. I think it was always going to be difficult for them once Carlo moved on to probably stay at the club and really kick on. So a shame, if we would have had him in a few years earlier when he was probably at his best, then it would have been a different story. But it's just the way it goes.
Yeah, it's funny with Allan in a way, isn't it? Because he was brought in at a time at the start of Ancelotti's first and only full season with the club. And it was a time of a lot of optimism. We thought this was going to be the rebuild. This was it. He brought in James, Decore, and obviously Allan. Now it's just Decore remaining now, and he's pretty much a squad player at best now. It just, I suppose it supports that argument of that season was very much a false start, wasn't it? No one anticipated Ancelotti leaving for Madrid at the end of that season. And then obviously that was the catalyst for Rafa Benitez coming in, which then put us back years and ultimately left us with another rebuild job this summer. But it seems like this one seems to have a bit more legs in it. Just before we move on from Allan, obviously you mentioned there about how key factors with him being moved on by the likes of Kevin Thelwell and Frank Lampard was his wages, his age. Is this just another example about how maybe the pennies drop now for the club? I think when you look back now, a lot of these top earners, you mentioned a few there, are no longer with us. A lot of money has been saved here. You look at the options that are going to come into midfield now, like your James Garners, who have the world at their feet potentially. So I suppose it's just another indication of the effect that Kevin Thelwell and everyone else at the club now is slowly starting to have, maybe this new sort of direction they want to take. You know, Allan, on 2 years, he's out the door. A lot of these other big earners are now out the door. It's just, it's starting to, it just makes for better reading, doesn't it, Mike? It looks like that argument, how there's a plan now, there's a bit of direction. It just further adds fuel to that fire, doesn't it? That there's a bit more of a direction at the club at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's probably highlighting the fact that Moshiri's taking a step back. That's what all indications are, I think. I'm not saying he doesn't interfere at times with other things. I'm not saying that Bill Kenwright doesn't interfere with certain things either. But I think, you know, when you have a director of football, we've been saying for years since, you know, okay, Steve Walsh was definitely a false dawn, but when Marcel Brands came in, everyone was saying, you know, we look forward to seeing what he could do. You know, let him do his job, and it never really happened. And he became a fall guy, which I thought was pretty unfair, to be honest. I don't think, I'm not saying he was totally blameless, and he had a couple of transfers that he brought in weren't great, but I think he did. You know, if he would have been allowed to do his job properly and allowed to be a director of football properly, then we would have probably sort of seen more rewards from his work. But I think Moshiri stepping back. I think Kevin Thelwell, you can see by the work he's done with the academy, with that structure, with staff he's brought in, with obviously the move arounds, with obviously Leighton Baines and Paul Tate being the prime examples. That's really positive. So the signs are there, aren't they, that we're looking to build a structure now that makes our academy efficient, that allows us to bring players through that can make it to the first team, that will then, let's get it right, that will then save us money in the longer term, because we haven't got to go and spend, say, 30-35 million pounds on a player. We've got a good lad coming through the academy, so it's all about basically being an efficient club and making savings where we can. And we're starting to see, you look at the profile of players that are being brought in. Obviously, we've got that experience with Cody Tarkowski and Aziz Gay, but then we bring in the likes of, obviously, Amadou Onana, who's, he was 20 when he signed, 21 now. You've got James Garner, young kid. You've got, Neil Maupay, was he 25, 26? He's not old. He's come up to his peak years. So we're seeing younger players brought in, which is giving a fresher look to the squad. And it just means that we are starting to see this direction and this identity, and it's a good mix of players, age profiles, but it does seem that manager and director of football are being allowed to do the job in terms of recruitment.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree there. So yeah, Allan has departed. He's moved to the United Arab Emirates after 2 years at the club. Just moving on now. Another little story that's been doing the rounds in the week. It's about Manchester United and Jordan Pickford. I just want to touch on this for a moment. Pickford has been, Evertonians don't need telling that he's been a fantastic goalkeeper, arguably one of the best in the league, one of Everton's consistent performers in recent years. Performed wonders last season for us, and he showed early signs before the injury this season that he's carried that form into this season as well. Now you've got a big club like Manchester United. Apparently, if rumours are to be believed, they're currently weighing up the situation with their own goalkeeper in David De Gea, who of course has been there for many, many years. I can see why this link can be made. Jordan Pickford is a top goalkeeper. He's the England number one. Should we be worried about this, Mike? Because obviously there's been some talk recently about Pickford maybe being in line for a new contract, which I think everyone would love to happen. It's one of them, isn't it? Like, players' heads can be turned by moves like this. Manchester United, when they come calling, I know it's a completely different player in a completely different position, but you think back to Romelu Lukaku, a lot of talk at the time of him signing a big new contract at Everton, and then a big club like Chelsea came sniffing and he was out the door. Should we be concerned about this sort of course, it is rumours. It doesn't seem to have a lot of legs at the moment, so we have to bear that in mind. But is it something to be mindful of going forward, that a lot of clubs, big clubs, might start come sniffing around Jordan soon, particularly Manchester United, given their current situation with their goalkeeper?
I don't think you should ever be concerned, because football's a business, and the idea is you create a model where you get good money or top money for your players. So if they want to spend 60-70 million pounds for Jordan Pickford, then go ahead. That's absolutely fine. That's their decision. I mean, I do think he'll sign a new deal. I really do. But all that does is protect our position as a football club. Because if he's on, say, a 4 or 5 year deal, as opposed to having 18 months left on his contract, it means we can demand a bigger transfer fee. That's all that does. I mean, I'm one of his biggest fans in terms of, how he's maybe turned his career around. The last 18 months, I think he's been particularly consistent. I think the media coverage of Jordan Pickford is absolutely horrific. I think the agenda against him just baffles me. I don't understand why there's certain players who get such a rough ride, and I think a lot of the time it comes down to the character of the player. I mean, I think Jack Grealish is another example. He's quite a sort of loud, sort of leery lad. He's out there. He's not quiet. He takes a bit of a drink, doesn't he, and things like that. And he's a talented footballer in the best side in the country, one of England's best players, and he gets ripped apart and gets questioned week in, week out. The same with Jordan Pickford. And, you look at the two other lads, England goalkeepers, all three, who include Henderson. It's all been about this week, about who's going to go to the World Cup, who's going to start the World Cup and all that. Jordan Pickford is miles clear as England's best goalkeeper from the sheer fact that he's been so consistent. He's always performed well for his country. He's been, as I say, Everton's best player for the last 18 months. And these lads who are coming through, or, potentially trying to take his place, they haven't got that level of consistency and level of experience in the big competitions. So it's no surprise that Manchester United look at Jordan Pickford because of the class of goalkeeper that he is, and the fact that he's used to be playing basically on the biggest stage. So when it comes to Champions League, the top end of the Premier League, it will not faze him. So the links are always going to be there, aren't they? And it doesn't bother me as long as Everton get the right money for any player, because no one is expendable. And as much as I like him and think he's a very good goalkeeper, as long as we reinvest correctly, it's no issue for me. Everyone's got a price, and that's how our club should be run. Brighton do it really well. Everton have got to be really following suit with that kind of thing.
And how much is he worth, Mike? How much would you say Jordan Pickford is worth?
I say I'll be commanding 60, 70 million quid, no problem. If he's on a 4-year deal, if he signs a new contract, say 4 or 5 years, then if you're your country's starting goalkeeper, we've got to be commanding that kind of money. We've got to be even in the current market where things have dropped slightly compared to what they were maybe 2-3 years ago. But even then, we've got to be asking that kind of money, and clubs will pay it. And if they don't want to pay it, then he stays, and we've still got the best goalkeeper in the country. So no problem with that either.
Yes, there you go. Not a lot of concern there. If we get the right money, then that's the main thing. You touched on it then, all the best clubs do it. I know they're not having the best season. Leicester, you look at them, clubs like Brighton, who you pointed out there. This is the sort of model that Everton have been crying out for a while, and we can't get too hung up on things like that. So there we go. That's just another rumour doing the rounds in this last week. So it'll probably be something else next week, but there you go. We do mention it anyway. Moving on now. Obviously, Everton are back this weekend against Southampton. Another away game. We are unbeaten in 6, I think, in all competitions. I think we are unbeaten in 6 games. We travel to St Mary's on the south coast. It's a ground where we don't have the best of records, I think it's fair to say. So, there's that sort of infamous win, if you like, in the green kit, which was seems a lifetime ago now, with Ross Barkley and Romelu Lukaku having a great game that day. But yeah, wins have been hard to come by at St Mary's in recent times. Difficult place to go, difficult side to play against. I suppose, I don't want to say play for the draw, but Everton are more than capable of going down and getting 3 points. We've spoke a lot of times on this show about how there is a good feeling in the camp at the minute, a lot of positivity. Players are in good form. We've got a strong defence, albeit Nathan Patterson's injured. But how do Everton approach this game, Mike? Do we sit back or do we take the game to Southampton? How do we approach this game?
For me, we're good enough to go there and win the game. We've got to look at. I think week on week, game on game, we've got better. We look at that first game of the season against Chelsea. You could argue we deserved a draw, but in an attacking sense, we weren't really in the game. But then you look at even the Villa game, the last 15 minutes. We were the better side. Should have really come away with something from there. Could have really won the Merseyside derby. Could have won at Brentford. Could have won at Leeds. You could argue those 2 games. Maybe we should have won at least one of them. Forest, I think we should have won that game. We were the better side. and obviously we got the 3 points against West Ham. So I think we are getting better every single week. And sides like Southampton, who are hit and miss at the best of times, they can look great one week and look poor the next. They're the sides that we should be going away and looking to beat. I don't think we need to set up also defensive. I expect the 4-3-3. I expect the side that started against West Ham, bar Nathan Patterson, to probably start the game against Southampton. I think Maupay will definitely keep his spot after scoring a great goal, and obviously gives Dom that extra bit of time to get himself ready. So yeah, I think it's going to be a difficult game. I mean, when you go away from home, it always is. But the good part of our performances at Brentford and Leeds, we should be looking at that thinking we can take that, because they're better sides than Southampton. Let's get it right. Both of those sides play with high intensity and put you under pressure. We should be able to go to St Mary's and impose ourselves, I think, early on in the game. But because we are a little bit lean in terms of goals, we think we've probably scored 5 in the first 7 games, conceded 6. We need to basically, make sure that we are as efficient as we can be. But Frank Lampard said after the West Ham game how much they've been working on the possession side of the game. We kept the ball a lot more against West Ham and had more possession than previous games. And he said we're looking to get even better at that and get the players more comfortable on the ball. So I think we can definitely go there, impose ourselves, limit them to few chances. We've seen how much we've sort of closed that back door. Now we look a lot stronger defensively. But we've got to now put a little bit of onus on our attacking players, whether it be the 2 wide lads, Maupay, Iwobi, who's been great. We'd like to see him to start scoring. Onana, all those kind of players have got to be imposing themselves in an attacking sense. But I fully expect us to go down there and at least get something. We shouldn't be going down there fearing Southampton, especially after the positive way that we started the season, despite being where we are and having only 1 win. I think overall it's been a decent start, and we can really see a progression with this side.
Yeah, of course. It's Everton's first away game for quite a long time, actually, when you think all the things that have been going on in the meantime. I think the Leeds game, am I right in saying, was the last away game? Obviously, that was 1-1, and then you think back to the Brentford game, which was the Saturday before that. And one of the big arguments about those games was the fact how we were very blunt in our attacking and we didn't have many goals in us. And okay, we probably still don't have an abundance of goals in us, but at least we have a threat now, don't we? In Neil Maupay, he's always looked sharp. He's always looked in the game. He could have easily had the goal in the Merseyside derby, and it was a fantastic finish against West Ham to give us all the 3 points. So he's obviously going to have a lot of confidence at the moment. So I agree with you. I think he will start the game. In terms of injuries, Calvert-Lewin and the rest of it, there was a couple of murmurs that maybe he picked up a bit of a twinge again before the international break. There's not been much to come of that recently, so I don't think that's an awful lot to worry about. But Frank Lampard is yet to give his press conference. I imagine that will probably happen sometime over the next day or so. So we'll probably have more of an idea of how Everton are looking squad-wise. But absolutely, I agree. I think Neil Maupay, he can offer a lot to this squad. And we spoke on the podcast last week with James about how Neil Maupay, he can really be a useful player for this Everton side. We talked about how Richarlison left the club, and Andros Townsend spoke on TalkSport very well about this. He said he's one of those players who, when he plays for you, you love him, and when he plays against you, you hate him. And Evertonians always talk to those kind of players. So just on Neil Maupay, he can really succeed at this club, can't he? Not just his performances. He's a narc as well, isn't he? He's one of them players who everyone sort of needs in their side. And I suppose there's a bit of a fear that we lost a bit of that when Richarlison went to Spurs. But I know it's early days, but what can Neil Maupay bring to this Everton side? You mentioned earlier on the pod how he's not old. He's coming into his prime essentially soon. And it was a fantastic take against West Ham. It's a fantastic touch, and he takes his shot quickly. And it was a great goal. So moving forward, he can be a really useful player for us coming from Brighton, can't he, Mike?
Yeah, well, I was on a YouTube live last night. It was a Bournemouth fans one, but it was a round table thing with me and a Brighton fan, a Bournemouth fan, and speaking to the Brighton fan, talking about Neil Maupay, and he said, the frustration at times was he'd missed the easier chances. We probably saw that against Liverpool, where yes, we thought he should have scored. And he said himself, I know he was devastated according to other players that he missed the opportunity, but listen, it happens. And then scores that goal technically against West Ham was absolutely fantastic. Takes it quickly, catches it brilliantly, because he caught it so well and it hit so early. the goalkeeper had no chance. We couldn't react to it. So I think the thing about him is he's a sort of throwback player, if you like, to a sort of Stephen Naismith as an example. Tim Cahill, masters of the dark arts, almost. They're a little pain in the arse, aren't they? Little sort of, you refer to him as a wasp, like a Paul Dickoff kind of player, who's always buzzing around, always in your face. He's annoying. He's a wind-up merchant. He loves, you look at the footage from when he scored against Crystal Palace at Brighton. He gives it a to the crowd. He loves all that. So that's what we like. We like those kind of players who leave it all on the pitch. Their attitude is basically that all that matters is putting in a performance, and he'll do whatever he can to basically get the team to win. So he will be a success because of the character that he is. And as we all know, as Everton fans, we take to those kind of characters. We like it. Richarlison, like you say, had that in his game. I mean, Richarlison's obviously a very, very good player, but that was one of his main things. Richarlison was that he appealed to us because you always knew he was on your side. He was playing for your team, and all that mattered was us winning. And that's what Maupay sort of gives me those kind of vibes about. Is similar kind of player in terms of the attitude and those characteristics. And he's going to be a pain in the arse. And I think if he can grab us sort of 10 goals this season, that'll be a really, really good return. Hoping that obviously other players can chip in. But I think it's a very smart signing. Not one of the signings where you go, look at him, it's going to set the world alight. Not the champagne Hollywood signing that maybe some fans strive for. But you always need players like Maupay in your side, and it's good to have him. You look at him, Tarkowski, Cody. Look what happened against West Ham when was it Smacker came on and he caught was it Garner with an elbow?
Yes,
straight away. They're all over. That's what you need, because we've been too nice for too long. We sort of, not saying there's no fight, but there's no sort of shit house going on. Is there? That's the big thing. And with him, with the two lads at the back, and Onan is a bit like that. He likes a bit of a back as well. You've got players who are there to fight for the team, and he's going to be, I think, front and centre of that.
Absolutely, yeah. I think taking, obviously he has a great attacking impetus on the game as well, but just as a personality, he's going to go down very well with these Evertonians. And, it's our first away game since we've had this sort of, this little boost in attack, if you like, because obviously we all know we didn't get quite registered in time for the Leeds game. So being able to take that extra bit of attack to Southampton will be a big plus for us, and hopefully we can go down there and get all 3 points. More than capable of doing it. We had this conversation last week. We don't want to get too carried away ever as Evertonians, but 3 points on Saturday could do us the world of good. It puts us in a really, really good position going into these final. For how many games? About 8 games left before the World Cup.
8 left. Yeah.
It puts us in quite a healthy position. If we can maintain these sort of performances, then things are quite looking us for going into this break. So it's a game we can more than capable go and win. I think a lot of people would be quite happy with the draw, but the way things are going, we're more than capable of beating Southampton with this current Everton side. As you say, I fully expect a similar sort of side to enter this game, bar, of course, Nathan Patterson. So we'll just wait and see on that one. Of course, Frank Lampard is yet to speak to the media, so we will get more of an idea of how we are looking squad-wise. But there you go. Southampton this weekend, 3:00 at St Mary's. Hopefully we can come away with all 3 points. So we'll leave the pod there. Thanks very much to Mike for jumping on. Mike from the Unholy Trinity podcast. Be sure to give them a subscribe and a follow if you can. Subscribe to the Toffee Blues podcast, of course, if you haven't already done so. Leave this video a like on YouTube as well. You can get this podcast on all your usual podcast providers as well. So thanks very much for tuning in. Big thanks again to Mike for jumping on. And we shall be back next week where hopefully we can discuss 3 points on the South Coast. So thanks for tuning in, everyone, and take care.